So, day one of my video blog for the EU institution trip, we were in Luxembourg and we visited the European Court of Justice, and we met this guy from the United Kingdom who worked with the PR and IT departments. Really knowledgeable guy about all three of the courts and had a lot of information. It was a great meeting. So first you have the Court of Justice that has a judge from all the member states and 9 advocates general. The 9 advocates general were really cool. They're like an advisory body that provides a second opinion to the judges, and their opinion, while it has no legal standing, I thought it was a good idea to have, since not all the judges hear each case. I thought it was good that the court doesn't have docket control either, like in the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court gets to choose what cases it hears, and sometimes it can prevent progress on some social issues, though recently that hasn't always been the case. In fact, it's help some social issues. But anyway, back to the courts. Well, the first court dealt with violations of member states of EU law and gave preliminary rulings to lower courts and answered interpretation questions regarding EU law from the lower courts. The general court, which is a different court, deals with cases between companies or individuals that are negatively impacted by a piece of EU legislation, and they have the ability to appeal these laws. This I thought was a really good idea because it gave citizens more power and helped protect the consumers. The U.S. doesn't really have this at the moment, and it's very clearly needed when you look at the laws being written about Tesla cars and ride-sharing companies such as Uber and Lyft. The laws are written to limit these companies by special interest groups, and the consumer is the one who hurts the most. As well as the businesses, which is very anti-free market. So I think the general court's idea is great and very beneficial to European society. The U.S. could learn a lot from them. The last court, the Civil Services Tribunal, wasn't really explained that much. I'm not really sure how a case comes up, but if it's acting kind of as a human resource kind of context that doesn't formally exist in the EU now because of the supranational aspects, then I guess it's a good thing, if that's what it does. They didn't really explain it, but I mean, I guess it's a good idea, helping their employees, improving the relationship between the employees and the employer, always good. The funny thing about the courts, though, they kept saying they have over 1,000 translators in these 2 massive golden towers. The key word on golden towers was repeated many times, that they have for each language. It seems a bit excessive, but I guess if you need all of them to translate each document into 28 languages, all for it. Anyway, yeah, that was the meeting at the Court of Justice, and then after that we went to Paris, and that was really the end of day number 1. On to day number 2. So today's number 2. We were in Brussels, and today was a busy day. We had 3 meetings at the European Commission, a meeting with the Foundation of European Policy Studies, and then a city tour. The first meeting at the Commission discussed asylum and immigration was really good. Really interesting to hear about the EU asylum policy and to see the statistics of asylum and immigration seekers. I thought more immigrants would be coming from Syria and Iraq, but Russia and other Eastern European countries still had the highest number of applications, which I thought was pretty interesting. Also found the EU rules of responsibility to be intriguing. There's a very long process to determine which country is responsible for a particular immigrant or asylum seeker, and once they're there, they can't leave that country. So for instance, if they're in Greece and they were put in Greece and they have family in the UK, they can't really visit their family in the UK. So it's definitely not a perfect policy at the moment, but it's good that they're trying to fix it and make it more efficient, and overall just solve that whole problem. That being said, the waiting period of asylum application is only 6 months, which is pretty short for the bureaucratic mess that is asylum applications, so I guess that's a really good job. The speakers did a good job. They were very knowledgeable, answered the questions candidly, and offered some really interesting questions, kind of like food for thought regarding the immigration or asylum seekers coming to Europe on boats, and should we go protect them, should we not let them drown. Really an interesting debate going on. Overall, great job. The second speaker, She was discussing enlargement, and there was a very clear disconnect between our knowledge and her presentation, and the discussion we had was just a little messy. Um, she started off poorly and got herself into an awkward situation by fielding questions early on, making statements that were overly sarcastic and not really warranted. And she also wouldn't answer any question, even though she welcomed them. She refused. She kept saying, "I can't answer that. I can't answer that." It was very clear that she was a PR person who was unable to answer technical questions about policy. And she was trying to give a basic introductory presentation to a group of students who have studied this for an equivalent of a month and a half in a normal university and who have more of an in-depth knowledge. And so I didn't think she was a good presenter, and that the discussion just went badly from the beginning. We may have been a little rude, but her inability to answer questions and handle questions was definitely apparent. I don't think she was a good speaker, and I hope that if you guys have the meeting next time, fix that. And make sure you get good speakers. The next speaker, though, talked about trade, and she did a better job. Honestly, though, after the enlargement discussion, I kind of zoned out a bit, but she was very knowledgeable, and while the lecture was very technical and heavy, she was very good at explaining it and explaining EU trade policy and all of the areas that fell into that. So I thought she did a very good job overall, and it was interesting to see all the different aspects of EU trade. And then we left the commission. So after the commission, I had a course meeting. I still kind of forget what exact course it was for, but it was with the Foundation for European Policy Studies, otherwise called FEPS. And they're a think tank that's funded by the European Parliament, which has their credibility come into question, but overall I thought they were pretty credible for what they did. They look at EU issues and try to raise awareness of what the EU is doing in Brussels, what's going on, how the EU is trying to handle a lot of these issues. So that way I thought they were doing a relatively unbiased look at things. The guy who we met with was answering questions in an academic way more than a diplomatic way, which I also really appreciated. He was there just to answer questions, and there wasn't really a lecture. So it was a good discussion. Very knowledgeable, and gave us insight into what the EU is trying to do to spread awareness, what his organization does to spread awareness and work with partner organizations in other member states. So it was a really really cool talk, interesting organization, and I got his card, his business card, to possibly publish something with them at a later date. Maybe that works out, maybe it doesn't, who knows, but I guess we'll see. Then after that was the city tour. It was okay. Nothing special for a city tour. It was also raining, which wasn't great, but it was nice to see the city. The mannequin piss was entertaining to see. I guess you go to Brussels, you have to see it. Just add it to the list of things to do. But our tour guide gave us some restaurant recommendations, which were good, and so for that, I guess she did a good job. Anyway, that's the end of day 2, and it was a busy, busy day. So day 3, day 2 in Brussels. Today we met with the European Council, and we met with this Italian lady, Regione, who was really cool. You could tell she'd been there for a long time, and her historical information wasn't that great, but her personal stories were really cool and interesting to hear about. She spoke about her some negotiations she was in, and how the Parliament got food, but the Council didn't, and so she had to be there for 17 hours on a bag of chips. Just very funny political stories that make you laugh. So she was definitely an interesting speaker. The guy she was with, I'm not really sure why he was there. She didn't really include him in the lecture. I feel like that was just kind of a miscommunication. But he had some interesting points as well, coming from the legal side in EU, EP Commission negotiations, Council negotiations, whatever. Or the negotiations between the Parliament and the Council, mediated by the Commission, I guess. But very interesting story, to say the least. And then we met with Turkey, and Turkey talked a lot. The permanent Turkish delegation to the EU. We met with this Turkish diplomat who spoke a lot about the EU accession the Turkish accession to the EU, and she was very romanticized in her view of Turkey. I thought she neglected a lot of Turkish policies that are very against EU values, democracy, human rights, etc. And she gave this perception that the EU was bullying Turkey in a sense and treating it unfairly, which is partially true, but it's also partially warranted given Turkey's history of anti-democracy, human rights violations, a lack of rights of the minorities, and so I just thought was very romanticized, but she gave a great talk to look at the Turkish point of view. You could really get a sense of where Turkey was coming from and what Turkey thought was important. I thought she did a great job, answered our questions very well, very candidly. I loved the discussion. Um, and yeah, she did a great job. There's not really much else to say on that matter. Like I said, I just thought it was romanticized. She didn't talk about ISIS or really the Kurdish population, but I think she did a good job talking about the EU and Turkey's potential membership. So that was really cool. And that was day 3. It was kind of a light day with meetings. So yeah, there it is. So day 4, day 3 in Brussels. Today was a really cool day. This morning, though it wasn't one of my specific course meetings, I decided to join the meeting anyway and went to the permanent delegation of Russia to the EU. And the first thing he does is he gets up and says, so we have 2 choices. I have 2 presentations. We can either talk the Russian relationship with the EU or we can talk the Ukraine crisis. And obviously we all chose to talk about Ukraine. And so it was very interesting to hear about the Russian point of view, how they wanted to maintain stability, how they criticized the West and Western media of using the crisis for geopolitical means, and kind of rejected Western opinion that Russia was trying to spread its influence and rebuild the Soviet Union, as some radical Western journalists and politicians have claimed. It was just a very interesting talk to get their perspective. I found a lot that made sense to me, which was different than the Turkish meeting, of which I was very critical. I thought that Russia said things that made a lot of sense in their perception of the crisis and what they wanted to see from the crisis. And the Russian mindset I found was very interesting. You really don't hear about it in the West, and especially in the United States. And their view of the world after the Cold War was just very different than what we're used to hearing. So I thought it was a great talk. He gave a great presentation, answered all of our questions. A little diplomatic at times, but still very quality discussion. I very much enjoyed it. And then later on in the day, we met with Open Europe, which is a economic think tank. The guy I think he was from the UK. I'm not really sure, but he gave it was heavy, it was very technical, but it was a good talk on economics and the different views on the EU, the economic union, the Eurozone, and how the Euroscepticism of the UK. So I thought he did a good job. It was very heavy and technical, which I kind of zoned out a little bit on, but overall it was a great talk. Was good at explaining himself and explaining the terms, and I found it useful overall. So yeah, those were the 2 meetings, and then I also thought Open Europe was a little rushed because literally right after Open Europe we left for Paris, and so I just think that if he had a little more time and wasn't as rushed, we may have been able to ask a few more questions, get a little more explanations out there, but overall it was good. I guess that's day 4. Cool. So day 5, we're in Paris now, and today we met with a think tank in Paris with this guy whose PowerPoint presentation was very lacking, not great English grammar. He also couldn't speak English very well and had a very thick French accent, but he did a good job at explaining the French point of view, what the French wanted in general with regards to the EU, Russia, Ukraine, which was really nice to balance with the Russian opinion from yesterday. And overall, I think he did a decent job. He spoke very softly, and his accent made it difficult to really hear him or understand him at times, but overall, he did a good job. He didn't answer a lot of the questions very well. Um, I think that could have been partially from a language barrier, but also because he may not have wanted to answer the questions. But overall, I think he was okay, and an overall interesting talk. Not too much to say about it. It just kind of was. And then about an hour later, we went to the foreign ministry, which was very cool. We didn't meet with the guy we were planning to. We met with this like panel of 3 people who dealt with different areas, and really it was more of just a question and answer session than a lecture. So we got to just ask whatever questions we wanted regarding to France in the EU, what France wants regarding certain EU policies. They gave a really good discussion. They were candid, which I appreciated, and they also made some jokes about France and what France wants and about some of the other countries. Not insultingly, just like chuckle jokes, which made it lighter and made the meeting a little more enjoyable. I will say there wasn't anything too surprising that was said in either the think tank or the foreign ministry, unlike the previous days where we met with Russia and Turkey and the Commission and the Council. Like, I thought these meetings were pretty straightforward. There was nothing overly surprising by what they were saying, but they did a good job. I enjoyed the meeting overall, and it was a good day. So yeah, I guess that's the end of day 5.